My family took everything to court, claiming I'd stolen money from our father's estate and demanding I be prosecuted for fraud. They sat across the courtroom convinced I was a thief living off family money while pretending to work meaningless jobs. Until my lawyer submitted one classified document, Homeland Security agents stormed in, and the lead agent said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Ma'am, this proceeding must stop. You're compromising a deputy director." My name is Agent Rebecca Stone. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. And for 10 years, I let my family believe I was stealing from them, instead of serving as one of the highest-ranking officials in American intelligence. Hinals. My family took everything to court, claiming I'd stolen money from our father's estate and demanding I prove where I'd gotten the funds to live without a real job for 15 years. They weren't wrong to be suspicious. I had no visible income, no career achievements, and somehow managed to afford a decent apartment while appearing unemployed. I sat in that courtroom listening to my own siblings accuse me of theft and fraud, surrounded by lawyers demanding financial records I couldn't provide without committing treason, until my attorney submitted one classified document to prove my innocence. And suddenly Homeland Security agents stormed into the courtroom, cleared everyone out, and said loud enough for my entire family to hear, "Ma'am, this proceeding is now under federal jurisdiction. Your Deputy Director Chen." My name is Agent Lisa Chen, and for 15 years, I let my family believe I was a criminal instead of one of America's highest-ranking intelligence officers. The Chen family has always been about transparency, accountability, and hard work. We're a family of small business owners, teachers, and public servants who built everything through visible effort and documented success. My father, Thomas Chen, owned 3 successful restaurants before his death last year. My mother, Helen Chen, taught elementary school for 37 years. My older brother, David, runs the family restaurant business with meticulous financial records. My younger sister, Amy, became a CPA who handles taxes for half the businesses in our neighborhood. My brother, Kevin, works as a city planning commissioner, known for his ethical standards and transparent decision-making. Even our extended family follows this pattern. Cousins who are shop owners, teachers, and local government workers, all with clear career paths and visible means of support. Then there's me, the family enigma, the one whose lifestyle never made sense to anyone. According to Family Understanding, I'm Lisa Chen, the mysterious daughter who's never held a steady job, but somehow manages to live comfortably. For 15 years, I've had no visible employment, no business ownership, no apparent source of income, yet I live in a nice apartment, drive a decent car, and never seem financially stressed. At family gatherings, I'm the subject of whispered conversations and suspicious glances. How does Lisa afford her lifestyle? They ask each other. What does she actually do for money? The questions grew louder after Dad's death, when the family started examining finances more closely. My siblings have developed theories over the years, none of them flattering. David thinks I'm involved in something illegal, maybe money laundering or drug dealing. Amy, the CPA, has always suspected tax evasion or unreported income. Kevin believes I've been secretly taking money from the family business for years. The suspicious circumstances are undeniable. I have no employer, no business license, no visible clients or customers. My tax returns show minimal reported income, yet I maintain a standard of living that suggests significant unreported revenue. When family members ask about my work, I give vague answers about consulting and government contracts that satisfy nobody. The situation reached a breaking point after Dad's funeral, when the family discovered I'd been receiving monthly payments of $3,000 from an untraceable source for over a decade. The payments came from what appeared to be a shell company with no legitimate business purpose. David confronted me first. "Lisa, we need to know where this money is coming from. If you've been stealing from Dad's business or doing something illegal, it affects all of us." Amy, armed with financial records, was more direct. "These payments have no legitimate explanation. Either you're committing fraud, or you're involved in criminal activity. Either way, we can't let this continue." The family ultimatum was simple: explain the money or face legal action for theft and fraud. When I couldn't provide explanations without revealing classified information, They followed through on their threat. The lawsuit claimed I'd embezzled money from the family business, engaged in fraudulent financial activities, and owed restitution plus damages. My siblings demanded full financial disclosure, tax records, and proof of legitimate income sources. What they didn't know was that for 15 years I'd been serving my country in ways so classified that discussing them would constitute treason. The mysterious payments were my covert salary. The vague job descriptions were operational cover. But today, in this courtroom, that carefully maintained fiction is about to be destroyed by the one document that can prove my innocence and expose the truth that will change everything. The night before the final court hearing, I sat in my apartment staring at the encrypted phone that had remained silent for 3 months. I'd requested emergency leave after Dad's death, needing time to process grief while managing the family's growing suspicions about my finances. But tomorrow, my siblings' lawyers would demand proof of legitimate income, and I had no way to provide it without exposing 15 years of classified operations. At 11:47 p.m., the secure line buzzed with the tone that meant American lives were in immediate danger. Deputy Director Chen, the voice belonged to Homeland Security Secretary Williams. We have a code red situation developing. Multiple foreign intelligence services have coordinated a cyber attack targeting American financial institutions. Initial assessment suggests they're attempting to crash the entire banking system within 72 hours. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of 15 years of hidden service pressing against the reality of tomorrow's court hearing. My family thought I was a criminal, and in 12 hours I'd either have to expose my true identity or face felony charges for fraud and theft. "What's our immediate threat assessment?" I asked, automatically slipping into the command voice I'd kept hidden from my family for over a decade. 7 major banks compromised, including the Federal Reserve systems. The attackers are using sophisticated methods that suggest state-sponsored coordination. We're looking at potential economic collapse unless we can neutralize the threat and restore system integrity within the next 48 hours. I thought about my family, probably sleeping peacefully, unaware that their sister, the one they believed was a thief, was about to coordinate a response to prevent the collapse of the American financial system. Intelligence sources? Multiple assets across 4 continents. The attack patterns match intelligence we've been tracking for 8 months, all pointing to a coordinated strike designed to destabilize American economic infrastructure. Deputy Director, we need you to lead the response team immediately. The irony was devastating. Tomorrow, my family would accuse me of stealing money in a courtroom, while tonight I was working to protect the entire American financial system from foreign attack. "Ma'am, there's another complication," Secretary Williams continued. "The cyber attackers appear to have inside knowledge of American banking security protocols. This suggests either a massive intelligence breach or human assets providing operational details to foreign governments." I stared at my reflection in the darkened window, seeing not the family criminal my siblings imagined, but the woman who'd spent 15 years protecting American economic security from threats they'd never know existed. "Where do you need me?" "We're establishing a crisis command center at the federal building downtown. You'll be coordinating response teams across all affected institutions while managing counterintelligence operations to identify the source of the security breach." I looked at my court summons lying on the kitchen table, scheduled for 9 a.m. In 10 hours, I was supposed to defend myself against charges of financial fraud. But American economic security took precedence over family relationships. "Secretary Williams, I have a personal situation that complicates immediate deployment." "Deputy Director, with respect, the American banking system is under attack. Personal complications are secondary to national security." I picked up the court documents, knowing that missing this hearing would result in default judgment against me. My family would win their lawsuit, and I'd be legally declared a criminal, all while saving the American economy from foreign attack. "Understood, Secretary Williams. Initiating emergency protocols now." I ended the call and began changing into tactical gear, knowing that when I didn't appear in court tomorrow morning, my family's worst suspicions would seem confirmed. The sister they thought was a thief was about to disappear into a federal crisis response, leaving them with no explanation and a default judgment declaring me guilty of fraud. But 15 years of serving in shadows had taught me that protecting American interests sometimes meant sacrificing personal relationships. Tonight was no different, except that this time, the sacrifice might finally force the truth into the open. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The Federal Building's Homeland Security Crisis Command Center at 2:30 a.m. operated like the nerve center of American economic defense. Unlike the public-facing Homeland Security offices that tourists might glimpse, this facility housed the most classified financial security operations in the government. Security checkpoints that normally processed hundreds of daily personnel stood nearly empty, staffed by guards whose expressions sharpened when they scanned my ultra-black clearance. The kind of access that granted entry to rooms most federal employees didn't know existed. I passed through 9 increasingly secure checkpoints, each one granting access to deeper levels of classified operations. My footsteps echoed through corridors lined with reinforced blast doors, each hiding command centers that could coordinate financial security responses across global markets simultaneously. The Economic Security Operations Center occupied 2 entire classified floors, its existence omitted from all public building directories. Here, in spaces that appeared on no official government schematics, America's highest financial security officials made decisions that could prevent economic warfare attacks, that could destabilize global markets. When I entered the main command center, controlled chaos greeted me like a familiar rhythm. Dozens of uniformed analysts and classified contractors worked at terminals displaying real-time intelligence from every major financial institution worldwide. Banking systems data, cyber attack vectors, international fund transfers, and threat assessments flowed in constant streams that trained specialists converted into actionable financial defense strategies. 6 massive screens dominated the front wall, displaying detailed maps of cyber attacks targeting American financial infrastructure. Red markers indicated compromised banking systems, yellow zones showed vulnerable institutions, and blue highlighted secured facilities, where emergency protocols had successfully prevented penetration. Deputy Director Chen, Colonel Martinez, my senior cybersecurity coordinator, approached with a tablet containing attack analysis data. We've confirmed coordinated strikes on Federal Reserve systems, major commercial banks, and credit union networks. The sophistication suggests months of reconnaissance and inside knowledge of our security architectures. I studied the data, my mind automatically processing attack vectors and defense scenarios. 3 months away from active duty hadn't dulled my analytical capabilities. If anything, the forced break had given me fresh perspective on financial security vulnerabilities. Current damage assessment? 17 major institutions compromised, but no funds actually stolen yet. The attackers seem more interested in demonstrating capability than immediate theft. Intelligence suggests this is a test run for a larger coordinated attack designed to crash American financial markets. A chill ran through me as I realized the strategic implications. If foreign intelligence services could prove they could penetrate American banking at will, it could trigger massive capital flight and economic panic. What's our response capability? Emergency cyber defense teams positioned at all major institutions, but they need strategic coordination to prevent the attackers from adapting their methods in real time. The attack patterns are using encryption protocols that only your previous financial security networks can decode effectively. I moved to my command terminal, surprised to find my clearance code still active after 3 months of emergency leave. Secretary Williams appeared beside me as screens came alive with classified financial intelligence streams. Deputy Director, I know returning under these circumstances is difficult, but you developed the financial cyber defense protocols these attackers are trying to counter. You created the intelligence networks that identified this threat, and you trained most of the analysts who'll be executing our response. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders like a familiar uniform. In this command center, I wasn't Lisa Chen, the family member accused of financial fraud. I was Deputy Director Chen, architect of American financial security, guardian of economic stability, and coordinator of operations that protected American prosperity on scales my family would never comprehend. Status of our embedded assets in foreign financial intelligence services. Active and providing real-time intelligence, but their covers will be compromised if we move too aggressively without perfect coordination across all targeted institutions. I pulled up cyber defense protocols I'd designed 2 years ago, systems so secure that accessing them required biometric confirmation from my specific clearance level. In this room, surrounded by screens showing attacks on American financial infrastructure, I realized that my family's court hearing in 6 hours would have to wait. The economic security of the United States took precedence over personal legal troubles, even if it meant appearing to confirm their worst suspicions about my character. 8 hours into the crisis coordination, the secure elevator doors opened with their distinctive chime, and I heard a voice that made my blood freeze. "I need to speak with Deputy Director Chen immediately. We have a federal court situation that requires her personal intervention to prevent a massive security breach." I turned from my command terminal to see a familiar figure in a dark suit striding across the operations center floor. Agent Robert Kim, my former legal liaison who'd worked classified cases involving national security and civilian court proceedings. Behind him, looking completely overwhelmed and out of place among the classified terminals and financial intelligence feeds, walked my brother David. David's eyes swept the Economic Security Operations Center with obvious shock. Rows of ultra-black clearance workstations, wall-mounted screens displaying real-time intelligence from American financial institutions, uniformed personnel moving with the urgent precision of people managing economic warfare. This was his first glimpse into America's true financial defense nerve center, and I watched him struggle to comprehend the scope of operations he was witnessing. Deputy Director Chen is currently coordinating multi-institution cyber defense protocols. Colonel Martinez intercepted them professionally. "I can arrange a briefing with—" "Colonel, with all due respect," Agent Kim interrupted, "there's a federal court proceeding scheduled in 1 hour that could result in the public disclosure of classified financial operations. I need immediate strategic guidance from someone with Deputy Director authority." I stood slowly, knowing that the moment I turned around, 15 years of carefully maintained separation would collapse completely. For over a decade, I'd managed to keep my two worlds apart through meticulous operational security and family deception. "Agent Kim," I said, my voice carrying the authority that comes with making decisions that affect national economic security. "I understand there's a legal proceeding that poses potential security risks to our operations." Both men turned toward me, and I watched recognition hit Agent Kim like a physical shock. His professional composure cracked, as his expression shifted from urgent legal briefing mode to complete disbelief, then to something approaching concern. "Dear God," he whispered, staring at me like pieces of a puzzle were falling into place. "Lisa Chen, you're the ghost director." David's head snapped between us, confusion and growing alarm written across his face. "Ghost director? Agent, how do you know my sister?" Agent Kim continued staring, his voice barely controlled with realization. "Know her? David, your sister has been running American financial security operations for over a decade. The ghost director, the invisible leader who redesigned our entire approach to economic warfare defense." "That's impossible," David said, but his voice wavered with uncertainty. "Lisa doesn't have a job. She's been living off suspicious payments for years. We're taking her to court today for financial fraud." I watched my brother's worldview begin to fracture as Agent Kim shook his head slowly, respectfully. "David, your sister isn't unemployed. She's been serving in the most classified financial security position in American government history. Every economic defense protocol you've read about in the news, every cyber attack that didn't crash our banking system, she prevented them." The command center had gone noticeably quieter around us, dozens of personnel pretending they weren't witnessing a family revelation with serious national security implications. David stared at me with growing horror and comprehension. The mysterious payments. "Classified salary," I said simply. "I've been Deputy Director of Economic Security for 8 years, David. Before that, I spent 7 years developing the financial intelligence networks that keep American economic systems safe from foreign attack." Agent Kim stepped forward, his voice filled with the kind of respect I'd never heard directed toward me by anyone in my family. "Ma'am, I've implemented legal protocols you designed. The American economy is stable today because of frameworks you created. It's an honor to finally meet the ghost director face to face." David looked like someone had just explained that mathematics worked backwards. But the court case, we're accusing you of stealing money." "I know," I said quietly. And unless we resolve this legal proceeding without exposing classified information, you're about to accidentally compromise 15 years of American financial security operations. Haido. The alarm that pierced the Economic Security Operations Center wasn't the standard alert. It was the tone reserved for imminent economic catastrophe. David jumped at the sharp, urgent sound, but I was already moving toward the main financial display before the intelligence officer could speak. Deputy Director Chen, we've intercepted communications indicating the cyber attackers have escalated their timeline, Colonel Martinez reported, his voice tight with urgency. They're initiating a coordinated strike on all Federal Reserve systems in 45 minutes. If successful, this could trigger immediate collapse of American financial markets. David stared at the screens showing real-time attacks on banking infrastructure, his face draining of color as he processed the scope of economic warfare unfolding before him. How is this possible? How can they attack our entire banking system? I studied the intelligence feeds, my mind processing financial data points that others would miss. 15 years of economic security experience kicked in as I analyzed attack patterns, timing sequences, and system vulnerabilities with the speed that had made me legendary in financial defense circles. They're not just attacking our systems, I said grimly. They're using our own economic protocols against us. Every emergency response we have for financial crises, they've studied and prepared to exploit during our countermeasures. I moved to my command terminal and began accessing systems that made Agent Kim step back involuntarily. My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up databases so classified that viewing them without proper authorization carried automatic life imprisonment sentences. Colonel Martinez, bring up Operation Golden Shield on screen 7, I ordered. Cross-reference with all Federal Reserve security assessments from the past 12 months. Ma'am, those files require Deputy Director clearance. I wrote those protocols, Colonel. Execute the order now. As classified data cascaded across multiple screens, patterns emerged that painted a terrifying picture. The cyber attackers hadn't just planned random financial disruption. They had systematically studied American economic defense responses and designed their operation to maximize damage while minimizing our ability to respond effectively. There, I pointed to a series of connections others had overlooked. Attack timing from 6 hours ago, system penetration patterns from yesterday, and Federal Reserve access logs from last week. They know exactly how we'll respond to each banking system compromise, and they've positioned secondary attacks to exploit our predictable defense deployment. David watched me work with growing amazement, seeing analytical capabilities he'd never imagined his supposedly unemployed sister possessed. But there wasn't time for family revelations. The American economy was about to suffer catastrophic damage unless we completely reimagined our response. Agent Kim, I said, my voice carrying absolute authority, I need you to immediately coordinate with federal court systems while I redesign our entire defensive approach to this economic attack. Ma'am, with respect, Treasury Department has already approved our standard financial defense protocols. Treasury Department doesn't have access to the threat intelligence I'm analyzing right now. I cut him off. Our defense systems are walking into a trap that will result in economic collapse unless we completely restructure this operation. I turned to the main financial display, calling up banking system maps and emergency response scenarios. My hands moved with practiced precision, redesigning economic defense tactics, communication protocols, and system protection procedures in real time. New operational parameters. Instead of standard institution-by-institution defense, we implement coordinated economic disruption of their attack. Team Alpha creates false system vulnerability readings using deception protocols I developed in 2021. Team Bravo positions for simultaneous counterattack using defense vectors that don't appear in any foreign intelligence planning. I continued for 50 minutes, completely restructuring a nationwide financial defense operation while David watched in stunned silence. This wasn't theoretical knowledge. This was practical expertise born from 15 years of designing operations that protected American economic prosperity from threats most people never knew existed. The attackers expect predictable American financial responses because they've studied our standard defense protocols, I explained, adjusting final operational details. Instead, we use modified economic warfare tactics they've never encountered, turning their intelligence advantage into our defensive superiority. When I finished, Agent Kim stared at the revised operation plan with obvious respect. "Ma'am, this is brilliant. You've transformed their coordinated attack into our counterintelligence victory." David looked at me like he was seeing a complete stranger. "How do you just redesign an entire economic defense operation from memory?" I met his eyes directly. "Because I've been doing this every day for 15 years, David. While you thought I was stealing money, I was protecting the American financial system that keeps families like ours economically secure." After the federal judge cleared the courtroom and sealed all proceedings, my sister Amanda and I found ourselves alone in a secure conference room adjacent to the courthouse. She sat across from the table, staring at classified documents bearing my signature, my intelligence assessments, my handwritten notes on decisions that had shaped American Homeland Security for nearly a decade. "I need to understand something," she said finally, her voice small and broken. "If you've been this all these years, why did you let us believe you were stealing from Dad? Why did you let us think you were a criminal?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her, for the first time in years without the careful emotional distance I'd maintained to protect operational security. She was 38 now, a respected family law attorney with 2 children and a husband who adored her. But sitting in this secure room, she looked like the confused younger sister who'd asked why I never visited Dad during his final illness, why I missed his funeral, why I always seemed to disappear when the family needed me most. "Because the truth would have gotten people killed," I said quietly, "including your children." I pulled out a classified file from my secure briefcase, one that even the federal agents lacked clearance to access. Inside were photographs, mission reports, and intelligence assessments from my early years in Homeland Security operations. This is Operation Family Shield, 2019, 3 years after I supposedly started stealing from Dad's accounts. I slid a photograph across the table. That's me, with a domestic surveillance team in Denver, developing intelligence networks that would eventually prevent a coordinated attack on multiple elementary schools. Amanda stared at the photo of a woman in tactical surveillance gear, face partially obscured by monitoring equipment but unmistakably me, younger, harder, carrying herself with the deadly focus of someone making life-and-death decisions about American children's safety. "But everyone thought you were just taking money and lying about having jobs." "I was taking money," I admitted, pulling out another file. "But not for the reasons you believed." I opened the folder to reveal a financial report dated April 15, 2020. Amanda leaned forward, reading the classified details of a Homeland Security funding operation. "I was running a deep-cover financial investigation tracking terrorist funding networks when I received intelligence about a planned attack on a school district in your neighborhood," I said, my voice steady despite the memories cutting through me like shattered glass. "The attack that would have targeted the elementary school where your daughter Emma was in 2nd grade. Amanda's eyes widened in horror. Her daughter Emma, now 12 and thriving in middle school, completely unaware of how close she'd come to being a casualty. The intelligence was solid, but acting on it would have blown my cover and compromised 2 years of financial infiltration work that had identified 12 terrorist funding networks operating in American communities. I had to choose: save Emma's school, or protect an operation that could prevent hundreds of future attacks on American children. I pulled out the final document, a financial authorization report written in my own hand, every transaction burned into my memory like a scar. I chose the mission. I used Dad's estate accounts to fund a counter-operation that would neutralize the threat without revealing my identity. The attack was prevented, but it looked like I was stealing family money for personal use. Emma never knew her aunt had spent her inheritance to keep her alive. Amanda's face had gone completely white. You used Dad's money to save Emma's life while we accused you of stealing from his memory?" That's when I realized I could never explain the financial discrepancies without compromising national security. I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. "Every family gathering where you talked about Dad's legacy, I sat there knowing I'd spent his money to protect his granddaughter. Every time someone accused me of theft, I accepted it, because the alternative was explaining that your sister's job required using family resources to keep American children safe." I closed the files and looked directly at my sister. "Every court filing where you called me a criminal, I knew I was actually the person preventing crimes against families like ours. But keeping you safe meant letting you believe I was stealing from you. Amanda stared at me with tears streaming down her face. All these years, you've been protecting us by letting us hate you. It's not protection, Amanda, it's the cost of this work. Some people serve by being heroes. Others serve by being villains in their family's story. 6 days after the federal court intervention, which resulted in all charges being dropped and the case sealed under national security provisions, Amanda returned to the secure conference room with questions that had consumed her during the entire legal aftermath. I need to see everything, she said, entering with the determined stride of an attorney who'd made a decision. Every file, every operation, every piece of evidence that proves what you've actually been doing for 10 years. I hesitated. Amanda, some of this information could compromise ongoing. Could compromise what, me? Rebecca, I just watched Homeland Security agents shut down our family's court case. I think I can handle learning the truth about my own sister. I opened my ultra-black database and began accessing files. 10 years of classified operations, intelligence assessments, and Homeland Security reports that bore my digital signature. As the documents populated across multiple screens, Amanda pulled her chair closer, studying each one with the analytical mind of a trained legal professional. This domestic security doctrine from 2018, she said, pointing at a classified manual. This is what they reference in all the Homeland Security briefings I've seen in my family law practice. The Stone Protocol for Financial Surveillance of Domestic Threats. Named after the family that developed it, I said quietly. Her eyes widened as understanding dawned. But in all the legal documentation, it says, developed by Judge Margaret Stone and Department of Homeland Security Legal Division. It credits Mom with creating these protocols. I pulled up the original files, showing timestamps and digital signatures, proving the protocols originated from my terminal, my analysis, my intelligence framework. Your mother provided legal expertise on constitutional compliance and civil rights protection. But the core surveillance architecture came from me. Amanda's face went pale as she scrolled through document after document showing the same systematic pattern. My innovations credited to our mother. My intelligence breakthroughs published under her name. My revolutionary approaches to domestic security attributed to Department of Homeland Security Legal Division rather than their actual architect. This can't be right, she muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. Mom's the most ethical judge I know. She wouldn't steal credit for your work. I opened another classified file, email correspondence between my mother and Homeland Security publishing officials from 2019. Amanda read over my shoulder as the truth unfolded in cold, bureaucratic language. Classification requirements necessitate attributing security innovations to Judge Stone rather than the actual author to maintain operational security, she read aloud. Publication under real author's name would compromise active domestic surveillance operations. The emails continued, showing how my mother had initially resisted taking credit for work that wasn't hers, but eventually agreed when told it was essential for national security and my personal protection. She was protecting you, Amanda said, but her voice sounded hollow. At first, yes, I replied, accessing more recent files, but look at these. I showed her documents from 2022, long after the original security concerns had been resolved. My mother was still accepting recognition for intelligence innovations I'd developed, still consulting on Homeland Security matters using my classified research, still building her judicial reputation on my invisible contributions. The Stone Doctrine for Modern Domestic Security, Amanda read from a prestigious legal journal article, by Judge Margaret Stone. Jesus, Rebecca, this entire article is just a summary of your classified intelligence frameworks. I pulled up the original strategic assessments I'd written, showing how my mother had essentially repackaged my work for public consumption while I remained buried under classification restrictions that prevented me from claiming authorship. Here's what really disturbs me, I said, opening a file that made Amanda gasp. Last month, she submitted a proposal to the Federal Judicial Conference for new domestic security guidelines. Look familiar? The proposal was nearly identical to a classified intelligence framework I'd submitted 9 months earlier. My mother was now actively competing with me for Homeland Security influence, using my own innovations against me without knowing it. She doesn't even realize you're a deputy director, Amanda said, the full scope of the deception hitting her. She thinks she's outsmarting some anonymous Homeland Security analyst. The woman who thinks I'm a criminal has built her entire judicial legacy on intelligence work I did while she believed I was stealing from our family. The decision to reveal my identity publicly came after sleepless nights wrestling with 10 years of ingrained secrecy. Amanda had been relentless in her arguments. The classified operations stay buried, but your contributions to national security law deserve recognition. You've let Mom steal judicial valor while hiding in shadows you created to protect everyone else. The venue was the National Security Law Conference. 700 federal judges, prosecutors, and legal scholars gathered to discuss the future of American Homeland Security jurisprudence. Mom was scheduled as the keynote speaker, presenting on Evolution of Security Law, 10 Years of Constitutional Innovation. I sat in the back row, wearing my Homeland Security credentials publicly for the first time in 10 years. The weight of my deputy director badge felt strange after years of civilian disguises, but the authority it carried couldn't be hidden anymore. Mom approached the podium with confidence built on years of accepting praise for work that wasn't hers. She began by displaying a slide titled, "The Stone Legacy, 10 Years of Legal Innovation." "Fellow legal professionals," she said, her voice carrying through the auditorium, "today I want to share the evolution of constitutional thinking that has fundamentally transformed how we approach domestic security law in the 21st century." She advanced to the next slide, showing surveillance guidelines I'd developed in 2020. She spoke authoritatively about legal precedents she'd never set, constitutional frameworks she'd never conceived, Homeland Security protocols she'd never designed. I waited until she was 35 minutes into her presentation, explaining legal strategies to an audience that included judges who'd implemented those exact procedures to authorize domestic security operations nationwide. Then I stood. The movement caught Agent Martinez's attention first. He was sitting 15 rows ahead, and when he turned to see who was disrupting the presentation, recognition hit him like lightning. "Holy hell," he whispered, loud enough for nearby officials to hear. "That's Deputy Director Stone." The whisper spread outward like ripples from a court ruling. More heads turned. More voices murmured. The audience's attention shifted from the speaker to the woman with credentials standing at the back. Mom noticed the disturbance and paused mid-sentence, squinting against stage lights to identify the source of commotion. "I apologize for the interruption," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the auditorium's acoustics. "But there's been a significant misattribution of authorship in this presentation." Complete silence fell over the room. Mom's face went white as she recognized my voice, then my credentials, then the devastating implications of my presence. Agent Martinez stood, displaying his badge. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "Deputy Director Rebecca Stone, United States Department of Homeland Security." The auditorium erupted. Officials scrambled to their feet, some saluting, others applauding, most staring in shocked recognition. Legal journalists began photographing what they realized was unprecedented. I walked down the center aisle, my footsteps echoing in sudden quiet. When I reached the stage, Mom stood frozen behind the podium, staring at me like I was materializing from her worst nightmare. "Judge Stone," I said formally, using her title instead of Mom, "the legal innovations you're presenting were developed under my direct authority between 2014 and 2024. The domestic surveillance guidelines, the constitutional security frameworks, the Homeland Protection protocols, all originated from classified Homeland Security legal analysis under my signature." I turned to address the audience directly. For 10 years, classification requirements prevented me from claiming credit for legal work that required absolute secrecy. However, the doctrines being presented have been declassified for judicial training. The original architect was not Judge Margaret Stone. The auditorium remained silent, 700 legal professionals processing implications. The original architect was Deputy Director Rebecca Stone, the woman this family believed was a criminal. The applause that followed was thunderous recognition of truth finally revealed. Judges who'd studied my precedents, who'd authorized operations using my frameworks, who'd built their careers on doctrine I'd created, finally knew who had protected American constitutional rights, while ensuring national security. Mom stepped away from the podium, her presentation forgotten, her reputation crumbling in real time. But for the first time in 10 years, I stood not as a family criminal, but as the architect of American security law. 9 months after the National Security Law Conference, I stood in Homeland Security's classified briefing room, preparing for what would become the Stone Family Legal Integration Protocol, a program where Amanda would officially join my legal assessment team as a constitutional consultant, specializing in civil rights protection within security operations. Deputy Director Stone, Agent Martinez announced, Attorney Stone has arrived for the briefing. Amanda entered in professional attire, her demeanor completely transformed. Gone was the accusatory anger she'd once directed at her supposedly criminal sister. In its place stood mutual respect between two legal professionals dedicated to protecting American rights and security. "Ma'am," she said formally, then smiled. "Ready to revolutionize Homeland Security law?" We'd spent months collaborating on comprehensive legal doctrine reform, incorporating lessons from 10 years of classified operations. Amanda's constitutional expertise provided crucial insights into how security frameworks could better protect civil liberties. Before beginning, I activated secure communications. The screen revealed our brother Michael from his law practice, and surprisingly, Mom appearing from her restructured judicial chambers. "Little sister," Michael said, grinning, "or should I say Deputy Director? I'm still adjusting to the fact that my sister has been running Homeland Security legal operations while I thought she was stealing from us." The healing with Michael had been profound. When he learned about the sacrifices I'd made to protect our family, he'd said, "You chose to serve in silence while we served in spotlight. Both matter, but yours required more courage." Mom appeared humbled on screen. After the public revelation, she'd faced professional consequences but found honest work focusing on constitutional review using her actual judicial experience. "The new role is challenging," Mom reported quietly. "Instead of claiming credit for security innovations, I'm focusing on civil rights oversight for security operations using my real expertise. It's honest work." More importantly, she'd begun acknowledging her actions. The hardest part, she'd admitted, was realizing I'd tried to prosecute my daughter while she was protecting America's legal foundations. Amanda pulled out a portfolio. "I've been working with legal historians to document our real family story, the truth about how security law actually develops. As we analyzed complex scenarios involving constitutional security, surveillance oversight, and civil rights protection, I realized the 10 years of separation hadn't been wasted." Amanda brought constitutional perspectives I couldn't gain in intelligence work. Michael offered private practice insights I'd never considered. Even Mom's judicial experience provided practical knowledge about legal implementation. We were stronger together than apart. When the briefing concluded, Amanda and I walked through Homeland Security corridors toward the exit. These halls no longer felt like places where I hid from family. They felt like spaces where I could finally serve alongside them. "You know," Amanda said, "I used to think justice meant winning cases in court. Now I think it might be protecting rights that people never know were threatened." I looked at my sister, Attorney Amanda Stone, constitutional consultant, and finally, truly family, and smiled. That's what real service looks like. My name is Deputy Director Rebecca Stone, and I am no longer a criminal. I am simply a woman who found her own way to serve with honor. 9 months after the National Security Law Conference, I stood in Homeland Security's classified briefing room, preparing for what would become the Stone Family Legal Integration Protocol, a program where Amanda would officially join my legal assessment team as a constitutional consultant, specializing in civil rights protection within security operations. Deputy Director Stone, Agent Martinez announced, Attorney Stone has arrived for the briefing. Amanda entered in professional attire, her demeanor completely transformed. Gone was the accusatory anger she'd once directed at her supposedly criminal sister. In its place stood mutual respect between two legal professionals dedicated to protecting American rights and security. "Ma'am," she said formally, then smiled. "Ready to revolutionize Homeland Security law?" We'd spent months collaborating on comprehensive legal doctrine reform, incorporating lessons from 10 years of classified operations. Amanda's constitutional expertise provided crucial insights into how security frameworks could better protect civil liberties. Before beginning, I activated secure communications. The screen revealed our brother Michael from his law practice, and surprisingly, Mom appearing from her restructured judicial chambers. "Little sister," Michael said, grinning, "or should I say Deputy Director? I'm still adjusting to the fact that my sister has been running Homeland Security legal operations while I thought she was stealing from us." The healing with Michael had been profound. When he learned about the sacrifices I'd made to protect our family, he'd said, "You chose to serve in silence while we served in spotlight. Both matter, but yours required more courage." Mom appeared humbled on screen. After the public revelation, she'd faced professional consequences but found honest work focusing on constitutional review using her actual judicial experience. "The new role is challenging," Mom reported quietly. "Instead of claiming credit for security innovations, I'm focusing on civil rights oversight for security operations using my real expertise. It's honest work." More importantly, she'd begun acknowledging her actions. The hardest part, she'd admitted, was realizing I'd tried to prosecute my daughter while she was protecting America's legal foundations. Amanda pulled out a portfolio. "I've been working with legal historians to document our real family story, the truth about how security law actually develops. As we analyzed complex scenarios involving constitutional security, surveillance oversight, and civil rights protection, I realized the 10 years of separation hadn't been wasted." Amanda brought constitutional perspectives I couldn't gain in intelligence work. Michael offered private practice insights I'd never considered. Even Mom's judicial experience provided practical knowledge about legal implementation. We were stronger together than apart. When the briefing concluded, Amanda and I walked through Homeland Security corridors toward the exit. These halls no longer felt like places where I hid from family. They felt like spaces where I could finally serve alongside them. "You know," Amanda said, "I used to think justice meant winning cases in court. Now I think it might be protecting rights that people never know were threatened." I looked at my sister, attorney Amanda Stone, constitutional consultant, and finally, truly family, and smiled. That's what real service looks like. My name is Deputy Director Rebecca Stone, and I am no longer a criminal. I am simply a woman who found her own way to serve with honor. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.